Welcome to the Sunday, August 20th edition of the PFF Forecast. We are getting closer. So it feels a little far away still. Preseason football, we're going to do our best. Our Browns carried us to victory. Hopefully you listened to the last podcast. We'll spend a little bit of time on preseason week 2, some of the big takeaways, and how we might be able to profit and bet on them in the future. We're going to hit the last of the futures markets that we can scrape together to talk about, which are the least points scored for the season. Also a defensive side of that, which is fewest points allowed. So it'll be a good podcast. And we're going to close out with a little bit of golf betting because the Tour Championship is next week for all the marbles. So we'll talk about that. Let's rock. Okay, the real take, guys, from preseason week 2 is that Jimmy G is back. 4 for 4, just a dynamic performance, clearly showing that he was the reason that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers looked good all those years. So I don't know if you guys can top that, but that was my takeaway from watching all 22 of every single snap.
He must be then the highest graded Raiders quarterback in the system, I would imagine. It's got to be him, right? It couldn't be anybody else like Aiden O'Connell or anyone, right?
The great Aiden O'Connell. He has like a 95 PFF grade.
Yeah.
By the way, if you want PFF grades for the entire preseason, along with all of the other premium data, you can go to pff.com, get yourself a PFF Plus subscription. Right now is a good time to do it with fantasy season right around the corner, live draft assistant. For you to sync your league and then profit from the AI optimized pick suggestions from our guy Timo Riske and Nathan Yaki. Really, really good stuff. So go get yourself involved in that right now and get yourself Aiden O'Connell PFF grades. Okay, let's go and actually talk about some real takeaways here, because there are some, especially if you pay attention to the way that players are utilized. I think there are a couple of interesting nuggets that kind of came out of this. Why don't we start with you, Judah? Some takeaways from this past week of preseason.
Yeah, I'll start with Dalton Kincaid. And I think I can even just go through my progression. As I saw, the Bills using a high pick on a tight end. Tight ends are traditionally not very productive in their first years. You saw like Kyle Pitts had a historic season, which is kind of funny to think about considering what it was last year. And I was like, okay, I guess I could kind of see this as a future play where they're trying to develop their secondary weapons. And that's certainly an area of need. And I think kind of the biggest obstacle to the Bills' success is the lack of secondary weapons behind Stephon Diggs. All of that is to say, Dalton Kincaid played a ton in the slot, almost as if he was kind of just like a slot wide receiver. And I think that's how they're going to utilize him, as basically like a hybrid. And I wonder if they use him as a chess piece, the guy who they're basically just going to like get on linebackers, utilize him as a wide receiver. And we should kind of view him in the same way we like talk about Mike Gesicki as really a slot wide receiver and not a tight end. I think that's probably how we should be viewing Dalton Kincaid. And I think we started to get the first little bits of that last week. I saw he had like a solid 20-yard catch of just like I lined him up in the slot, got him on a linebacker right up the seam. And that, I wonder if it kind of breaks the mold of a tight end, struggling in his first year, really just because he's a wide receiver. And especially if they're utilizing him and getting a bunch of mismatches, I think that might kind of ameliorate some of the concerns of Bill's secondary weapon. Obviously, all of this is like reacting to a small sample of games, but it's at least a little bit a hint of what might be, and something I'll definitely be paying attention to early in the season, because the secondary weapons of the Bills were certainly my primary concern.
You had 14 snaps lined up as an inline tight end, 14 as a wide receiver, 2 out wide, 12 in the slot. And I guess the takeaway here would be, because when I first heard that, I was like, okay, he's lining up in the slot. Great. You're just converting a tight end into a slot receiver. Like, is that really what you want to do? I mean, he's like 6'3", 250. He's an athlete, but I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense. But assuming that teams are going to react to the personnel, and still treat him like a tight end, right? You can take advantage, I think, of those linebackers more so. Drew, it'll be interesting to see how teams adjust to that, though, because, if you are just going to put him out there in the slot all the time, I think it also speaks to the fact that the Bills do not have a particularly deep receiving core, which we've talked about a bunch on this podcast about. Brad, what were some of your takeaways?
Yeah, I had a stock up on a running back and a stock down on a running back. The first is Javonte Williams for the Denver Broncos. I think I've even said on this show, I just did not see him playing early this season. It wasn't just an ACL tear. It sounded like it was ACL, LCL, all the CLs. But played 12 snaps in the game this past week, looked pretty good. I didn't notice any lack of explosiveness. There will be. Players do not return to 100% health right away, but he's better than Samaje Perine, even at 85% probably. And I think he is going to be heavily involved. So stock up there. Unfortunately for our guy, Devon A-Chain. Also, it was Devin A-Chain, I swear, a month ago, but now it's Devon A-Chain. So apologies for that one. But anyway, he was fifth in the rotation for the Dolphins the second week in a row in the preseason, even behind guys like Savon Ahmed. And he got hurt. Someone pile drived him into the ground and hurt his shoulder. So already kind of wasn't working with the number one offense, who did play a good bunch this past week, but he also got hurt on top of that. So he avoided the Dalvin Cook signing, but not great early results. We'll see, though. Showed some burst, has the speed, had one very nice run. But yeah, our offensive rookie of the year tickets, I think, took a small hit.
Definitely. So actually, you stole my big takeaway, which is I was hunting for some receiving total props on Javonte Williams. He was targeted 5 times in that game. If you have watched any of the Denver Broncos, I guess we could call it an offense, although it's really more just offensive to watch. And what they have done, it is not particularly explosive. And Javonte Williams, might be the featured receiver in that dynamic Russell Wilson offense. I will say Wilson looks a little bit more spry, which is good, but 5 targets in the preseason. I mean, you would expect, once the games actually start happening, that maybe they're, needing to check down a little bit more. So I thought that was really interesting. I'll be keen to see where his receptions prop shows up week 1. That's one to kind of write down and be ready for, especially when it opens. So I think that's kind of a big takeaway from my side. That was going to be my main one, Brad. There are some, I think, rookie receivers as well that have kind of shown some promise, and I think that's another place to look. We talked about Mingo, Rice over in Kansas City. Actually, the Niners have had with Bell and what he's done. Any of those guys particularly stand out to either of you?
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say, actually looking like the Broncos snap counts, they put their starters for a while. Like Cortland Sutton got 23 snaps, Jerry Jeudy got 20 snaps, Marvin Mims got 13 snaps. And I think he's kind of emerged as the wide receiver 3, right? Of course, our guy, Marvin Mims. Look, the most important thing, especially if we're going to be betting into, yardage props or even offensive rookie of the year, you got to be on the field first. And this has certainly signaled that Marvin Mims, at least in the beginning of the season, will be on the field. You can still get him offensive rookie of the year at 100-1. Many of these guys on the list, like Form, not necessarily going to be playing right from the get-go. Mims certainly has the opportunity. I've made the case many times that I'm not buying the Broncos offense, but something like Marvin Mims emerging is exactly the ingredient that can kind of unleash this offense, right? If this is Russell Wilson is the guy who can throw deep down the sideline. That fits perfectly with Mims' skill set. You can get 35-1 to lead rookies in receiving, 100-1 offensive rookie of the year. If the guy's on the field in week 1, he has that opportunity. That's the most important thing.
I think there's been a lot of good results for a lot of these young receivers, frankly. I agree with you on Mims. I think once Tim Patrick went down, he's clearly the guy there. They traded up for him, so you knew they were going to try to get him into rotation. But Rashee Rice had a dozen targets, maybe more. The big one for me, though, I think, is Jonathan Mingo. Yes, it's going to be a worse offense than, certainly than Kansas City. But they clearly like him, as a blocker. They played him at 11 and 12. Like, he was not coming off the field. And I think you see already Bryce Young really likes throwing to him. And Adam Thielen and DJ Chark are fine professional players, but Mingo is supposed to be Bryce Young's guy for the next decade in theory. Obviously, the ideal outcome with the 1-2 picks there. And I know they pushed very hard, Carolina did, not to give this year a second to Chicago. Maybe they wanted Mingo the entire time and knew that was their target. So I think he looks good, and they use him in a lot of different ways. Sometimes rookies will be less productive because they're not trusted in certain personnel packages or things like that. That is not appeared to be the case with Mingo whatsoever.
Such a big opportunity because the Carolina Panthers, I don't think, are going to be very good this year. Newsflash. And one of the reasons, and we've talked about this, I think there's a little bit of maybe delusion from the part of some people thinking that they do have some like good receiving core depth. Like I like DJ Chark as much as the next guy, but like there's a real opportunity for Mingo to be the number one guy there and the number one guy in an offense that has to throw a lot, right? With a rookie quarterback who I think, watching Bryce Young play is a little bit of up and down, but I think what you saw from Bryce Young, and we've seen a lot of young quarterbacks, we talked about Trey Lance, we talked about CJ Stroud, where they just don't quite look like they know what's going on. At least Bryce Young feels a little bit more in control, I think, has a bit more kind of composure there. So the chances of those two things both kind of working out, I think are good. What does Mingo have a prop out there that we can take advantage of?
It's a good thought. Let me look at it.
You can get 14-1 most regular season receiving yards among rookies. And his offensive rookie of the year odds are you can get it 50-1 on FanDuel and DraftKings, I see actually also.
Yeah, I think the rookie of the year is going to be tricky, right? Because if he has a good season, that presumably means that Bryce Young has a decent season, right? I think it would be hard for him to win it over Young. But I do think the rookie receiving total, because you need, he doesn't have to be the best receiver. Jackson Smith-Njigba could be the best receiver. He's competing with two very good receivers for targets in that offense, right? So I think that's it might be a really good opportunity here to grab him early, just based on what we've seen so far from the usage. Any other takeaways aside from the brilliant foresight that I had on Thursday, 5 minutes before the game started, to bet the Browns plus 3.5 and what ended up an 18-18 tie?
Yeah, we had a tough. I did first half and full game on my over. So I think I pushed the first half and then lost the full game by a half point. Maybe some people got 42 instead of 42.5. It did finish exactly at 42. So, tough break there for the fellas, but I think we're having some good takeaways, some good insights. Only last thing I would say, it's not super relevant, but I have to shout him out. Tyson Bagent, Bears backup quarterback. I think he's going to win the number 2 job. I think he's going to beat out Phillip, PJ Walker. The dude's a baller. So random thought, but he looked very good.
Yeah.
We can always count on Brad to deliver something about the Bears that no one else cares about.
Correct.
And for that, we're truly grateful. At least you didn't throw out there that we've learned definitively that Justin Fields is the best quarterback in the NFC, as per Shannon Sharp, I believe's list of NFC quarterbacks. That is a scalding hot take. He's preparing himself really well for teaming up with Stephen A. Smith. The combination of those two talking about football is going to be really an absolute treat to watch. Nothing gets me more excited for a football season than I think it's Tuesday. Every Tuesday, it's Stephen A.'s list. I don't know if you guys have seen this segment on ESPN, but Stephen A. power ranks, his top 5 power ranking. And it is truly a delight to listen. It gives you an insight into what a lot of people that don't listen to great podcasts like this and, kind of understand how football is actually played and what they think is going on in the NFL. It's really tremendous content. Also tremendous content, I should mention, is the Printing Press Discord. For some reason, you are not there yet. I don't know what you're waiting on. But the PFF Printing Press Discord is the place to be this season. Got over 1,000 Really, really great people in there, wonderful community, people who bet obviously the NFL, but a ton of other things as well. And there'll be some good reason to join the Discord this year. Not only are we giving away some printing press hats, we'll be getting some more merch during the season, be giving that away. And we are doing a Guess the Lines contest this year, just to make it a little bit more fun on Sunday night as we guess the lines here right after the week commences, or I should say the Sunday commences. On this podcast. So go join. The link is in the description in this YouTube channel if you're listening on YouTube, or you can find it on Twitter and any of our various posts or bios. If you can't find it there, just hit us with a DM. All right, let's get into a few futures markets. We've hit probably every single futures market this offseason, but we managed to find some interesting ones that actually could present some value. And we found them these are on DraftKings. I think they're elsewhere as well. These are scoring specials for the entire season. So a few markets we're going to hit here: most points, least points, and fewest points conceded. So from a defensive perspective, let's start with most points here. Not surprisingly, favorite Kansas City Chiefs at plus 500. The Eagles are 6-1. Bills and Bengals both 850. Cowboys are 12-1. The Detroit Lions and the San Francisco 49ers are both 14-1. Los Angeles Football Superchargers 16-1. My Minnesota Vikings are 18-1. The Seahawks 19-1. Dolphins, Jets, Ravens, Jags, all 20-1. I will stop there, and I will start with you, Judah. What are some of the angles that you like for most regular season points?
Yeah, I like the Chargers 16-1 most points. And I think the reason for this in particular is if I'm thinking about the Chargers season, especially the tails outcomes, and we've talked about this a lot, maybe there's some value with Herbert, leading the league in passing yards or MVP. Those are a lot shorter, and I actually think don't directly hit on the thesis that like the Chargers offense is going to be really good, as well as this market. Granted, there's going to be some variance here in that like the Chargers offense can be amazing, but the Chiefs are better or the Eagles are better, whatever that is. All but just to say, we know the upside case for the Chargers, which is that Justin Herbert can play at an MVP level. Kellen Moore can unlock a kind of new dimension of this offense. Maybe Quentin Johnson is an added weapon that they have needed. But also, I think it particularly fits the Chargers because their defense has been really dreadful for the past couple of years. Staley came in here going to run all this too high stuff, but they can't really stop the run. And I'm not sure they didn't add any personnel here that's going to kind of fix that issue. So I see the Chargers as a team that can be playing in a ton of shootouts this year with even if their defense does improve a league average unit, add in the fact that like if Justin Herbert plays at an MVP level, the Chargers offense is going to be amazing. And you're getting this at 16-1 as opposed to plus 800, plus 900, whatever his MVP odds currently sit at. I think if we're betting on the Chargers bullish thesis, this might be the best market to do so.
Brad, what do you think?
Yeah, similar thoughts, similar team hyped up in some capacities. And for me, it's the Jaguars at 20-1. You do get a little bit less of, you're going to get some shootouts for the Chargers that probably help when they play the Chiefs twice a year, etc. But the Jaguars, I guess, do get one game against Kansas City with that first place AFC schedule. The concern is the 6 games against their division. Do maybe they get away with winning games 24-7, things like that. But I don't like their defense all that much. I think there are still holes on this unit. They're very young. The injury of Devon Hamilton is a very good player for them on the interior. Outside of Tyson Campbell in the secondary, I think there are some question marks. So I think they are going to have to throw a lot, play through some games, kind of be like a Lion Minnesota type last year where we know they're the better team. They were 7th EPA per play last year. Like, we know they're a good offense, but their defense doesn't do enough to get them to kind of just close games out and stop scoring. And for me, them being out to the top 10 in odds, I think is a little bit crazy.
Like all of those, I mentioned the Minnesota Vikings, my Minnesota Vikings here. I mentioned this before. I think they could have one of the better offenses in the NFL this year. Defense is going to be a struggle for them. That I think helps from a scoring perspective, right? If their defense, you look at some of these teams and you go, okay, well, if my defense is just, really on it, could that potentially hurt, my offenses need to score? I think there are a few teams where that is unlikely to be the case. I think the Lions are one, but the Vikings at 18-1 are the one that really stand out. They have a better quarterback. and better receiver, number one receiver than the Detroit Lions do, and yet are priced with longer odds. So I like the Vikings there. I think the Seahawks, you can make a case for them as well. They play in a division that, just aside from the Niners, not going to present a lot of challenges to them. I think that could both help and potentially hurt, but really good receiving core. We've talked about Geno being a top 10 graded player last year at the quarterback position, and Pete Carroll. Clearly loves to throw the ball. Maybe he gets in there, takes a few snaps, throws a few touchdowns as well. But that's the one that I like. Okay, we're going to get to least points here before we do. Reminder, you can go to DraftKings and bet these yourself. You can also go to DraftKings and join the biggest best ball tournament in DraftKings history, $10 million in guaranteed cash prizes up for grabs. And use promo code PFF when you enter the contest and get your first entry back in DK dollars. It's with promo code PFF. Start playing best ball today, which, in case you're wondering, means you don't have to deal with start, sit, add, drop, trade, none of that baloney. You draft your team, and then your top scorers count towards your score every single week. You don't have to sub anyone in, and you then can be eligible to take home a $1 million top prize. Go to DraftKings.com, download the DraftKings app, either one. Use promo code PFF to sign up for the Best Ball $1 Million tournament with promo code PFF. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. Least points scored. Not surprisingly, the inverse of what we just talked about. Chiefs and Eagles with the longest odds there. The shortest odds, the Arizona Cardinals plus 650, Tampa Bay at 9-1, the Washington Commanders 10-1, Packers and Colts at both 11-1, Tennessee and Houston at 13-1, the Rams and Panthers at 14-1, the Patriots 15-1, Steelers 18-1, the Falcons are 20-1. I'll stop there. I have a hunch that there may be a few longer shots that you guys like here. Let's start with you, Judo. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm going Panthers 14-1. I think it kind of hits on a bunch of themes we've talked about in the past, which is that I think this is an offense that's going to try and make things very, very easy for Bryce Young. And try and make things very easy for Bryce Young means a lot of kind of early down runs. I don't see this as a particularly successful unit. I don't think they're going to be able to do that very well. Granted, they had a ton of success last year, but this is a totally new regime. Their offensive line's not great. Miles Sanders is not anyone's idea of a great running back, as we've mentioned in the past, with his under 925. And I think that's going to put Bryce Young in a bunch of difficult spots and a bunch of third and longs, and they don't really have the receiving weapons to kind of help out Bryce Young on a 3rd and 7, a 3rd and 9 type of situation. And I see that as kind of the offense they're going to run, which is going to mean few plays, fewer drives, not really going to be able to sustain drives when they do have them. I really just see this as a developmental year for the Panthers, and I'm not buying the kind of long tail on the right side. I don't really see the potential for too much upside. Just kind of a stale offense that's going to run, pass and punt. I think that's the likely occurrence of many Panthers drives.
Yeah, I like that one. And I think their defense is solid enough, and they're in that division where it works out. I'll stick with the AFC South once again. I can't believe the Houston Texans are not in the top 5 of this list here. Yes, they're right there at 6, 13-1. But the thinking there is, not only I don't love the offense right now. They trotted out a starting trio of Nico Collins, Robert Woods, and I can't even think of who the third guy was in the game. And obviously, John Mechie got tanked out. All these people that people love. Dalton Schultz isn't even the clear bona fide starter in this offense. Good offensive line, but you lose Titus Howard, the right tackle. Sounds like for a couple weeks to start the year. And we've talked plenty about CJ Stroud. I think he did finally actually show some flashes and some really, really nice passes in that game. But I don't think he's going to have a great rookie season. So not only that, but also the schedule to a degree. And then I think this defense is actually like low-key kind of talented. And I think when you add in D'Amico Ryans, who has proven to be a phenomenal coach, but also you trade up, you mortgage your franchise to go get Will Anderson. You bring in some solid veterans in the secondary, like a Jimmy Ward on the back end, who obviously played with D'Amico Ryans in San Fran for a couple of years. And their secondary is young and talented. I think we're going to see Derek Stingley, Jalen Petrie, like a lot of these guys step up and play better. So yeah, they're gonna play a lot of 17-10 type football games, and I think they're somehow a value here just because they're not in the top 5. And lastly, the Colts and the Titans are in the top 5. So teams they're playing against are not expected to score either.
I can get on board with that. So I am going to follow something I said earlier. The Denver Broncos offense to me is a potentially scary situation. I am not going to overreact to the preseason, but at 25-1, based on what we saw last year and a little bit of what we've seen this year, and let's just say Sean Payton and what he did with Drew Brees, I'm not sure translates to Russell Wilson. I think there are some reasons it could, right? But there are also some reasons based on what Russell Wilson has done in the past, which is basically just throw deep shots down the sideline. Not to be overly crass there, where I think this thing could not be particularly great. You've also got, I think, some receivers with a decent amount of question marks there. So I like them at 25-1. I think you could also look at the Colts if you were looking for something with a little bit of shorter odds. The Colts at 11-1, and the Texans at 13-1. I think could be a little scary, but I like shooting a little bit for the stars here. I think at 25-1, every other team past that point, to me, it basically jumps up to 55-1. Really hard to see those teams, beneath the Broncos having the fewest points scored unless there's an injury. So I think the Broncos are kind of the peak of that. Even if their quarterback is healthy the whole year, like they could still be that bad. So I like them at 25-1. Judah, you have one more?
Yeah, no, I was also looking at this and I'm like, okay, I check another sports book. Their odds are not going to be that much different, right? Turns out if you go on FanDuel and look at these markets, they couldn't be more different. A couple that I'm looking at, the Colts are 25-1, which is popping out to me. I mean, Anthony Richardson's their quarterback. It's the left tail is extremely fat. He's the rawest prospect. I think that's going to start in the NFL in a long time. I think it's like 133rd out of 200 quarterbacks in accuracy rating last year. Sure, he might be good in the future, but I think his kind of expectation has got to be extremely low. Talk about also an offense that's going to run very slow with a lot of run plays. And one that I also really like that's 11-1 on DraftKings and 50-1 on FanDuel is the Packers, who, again, they played at the slowest neutral pace since Matt LaFleur has gotten there. We have no idea what Jordan Love's going to be. There certainly is a fat left tail there, and an offense that, if Christian Watson doesn't keep up that elite efficiency, has maybe the one of the worst receiving units in the NFC. A rookie quarterback, a quarterback who has a 90 career dropbacks. Yes, I believe in Matt LaFleur as a coach, but a slow offense with a unproven quarterback and pretty weak weapons at 50-1, I think is a crazy price.
That's that's crazy.
That's why you shop around. We should have called this segment comparing FanDuel and DraftKings odds. We got there eventually. That's what matters. Points against. Fewest points conceded in the 23-24 regular season. The Niners are 6-1. Ravens are 9-1. The Eagles and the Steelers, along with the Bills and the Jets, are 12-1. Cowboys and the Jags at 14-1. The Saints 16-1. Patriots 18-1, along with the Bengals. The Denver Broncos, Cleveland Browns, Miami Dolphins, and Atlanta Falcons at 20-1. The Chargers, Packers, Panthers 25-1. Jude, I don't know if you have found this on FanDuel at all. If so, any that immediately stick out to you in terms of kind of being mispriced, and if not, what do you like here?
Yeah, I have not seen anything on FanDuel and DraftKings. We got some weird things going on between different states. I spent plenty of time in Pennsylvania and New York recently. Currently in New York, I don't see that market. The only market I saw was the fewest points on FanDuel, but I still do like the Cleveland Browns at 20-1 for the fewest points. Now it's a bit scary. They're playing in a tough division, but ultimately I think strength of schedule and projecting these sorts of things is very fluid in the teams we thought that would be good. Coming into the season, it's going to turn out that, the Broncos of last year who have a 10.5 win total actually are a 4-win team. That sort of thing happens all the time. The main point here is the Browns have had an incredibly talented defense for a very, very, very long time. But their defensive coordinator, plenty of issues there. One that always comes to mind is Denzel Ward's been one of the best man corners in the league. They kind of refuse to play man coverage, but they hired Jim Schwartz this offseason. Jim Schwartz has been one of the best defensive coordinators by many people's metrics. You add up a team that's got talent. I mean, Myles Garrett's probably the best edge player in the NFL. They signed Zardarius Smith, Shelby Harris, Alvin Tomlinson, Denzel Ward. Their corners say Gavin Newsom, Greg Newsom. George, I was just thinking about you in California there with my Gavin Newsom play there. Greg Newsom has graded out extremely well as a corner. Add in Jim Schwartz to an already talented defense, and I think they have a ton of upside. And I don't think that's really being priced in because, frankly, they've underproduced relative to the talent.
That's a good point. I'll just say, I'll let you go next, Brad, but the Browns were my bet here. So I co-sign everything that you just said, Judah. And the thing that I will just kind of add on to that is this market, I think you look at the odds and what we know about defenses is that it's just much, much less stable, right, than offense. So, as you think about, okay, what should I be thinking with this market? I think it's finding there are destined to be inefficiencies here where the pricing of this market is basically just looking at like how good were these defenses last year. And, that just tells you less than you'd want it to. So much more variance. And a team, the Browns are perfect. The one other thing I'll add, Judah, in addition to all the talent that they have there, is the inclement weather that they play with at home. It's going to hurt them and it's going to hurt their opponents. And the fact that I don't know if their offense is going to figure it out also will help them, right? In that, they may not be in as many shootouts, as you would want with when you're paying a quarterback that much. Anyways, love the Browns. Brad, what do you think?
Yeah, the narrative you just made right there actually ties into my favorite bet here, which is the Washington Commanders at 28-1. Also playing a bad field, had bad conditions. Their offense probably is not going to be particularly great with Sam Howell. So they're going to play a lot of low-scoring games. And as, of course, we talk about your defense can be predicated on opponents, but Commanders last year were a top 5 defense in the NFL. I think, George, you and I talked about this off camera, but they had the fewest turnovers in the entire NFL last year and still were like a top 10 team in EP per play allowed and success rate allowed. And for me, their big weakness, frankly, was at corner. You bring in Emmanuel Forbes in the first round, some other pieces, Quan Martin in the second round, the safety, kind of, do it all, defensive back. And then lastly, I mean, you get Cowboys and Eagles, which does not help, but you get some Giants and you get some NFC teams. Maybe you get a couple ugly games in there as well. So, from a value standpoint, that's my favorite. I'll let you go, George, but so I don't steal it from you. But there's one team higher on the board I like as well.
No, that was really the one. So it's impossible for you to steal anything from me. I'll tell you one team that I'm not betting on, and that's my 49ers at 6-1. I think anyone that is betting the Niners to concede the fewest points at 6-1, or frankly betting any of the kind of two teams that are less than 10-1, I think you're kind of out of your mind. But Brad, I'm curious who your other team is.
Yeah, the Saints 16-1. I know we said defense is not stable, but they've been top 10 in EP per play allowed 4 years in a row. They did lose some talent, but they've just always managed to overcome it. And you get 6 games against Carolina, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay.
That's the thing, right? The offenses own so much of this statistic. I think that's the biggest concern, I would say, Judah, to your point about the Browns. It's just the opponents. But, Joe Burrow, a little bit of, a little unhealthy here, potentially going into the season. So you never know there. I do think Kenny Pickett is I feel like there's a chance for him to take the proverbial next step, so to speak. I like that offense a little bit. So might be a little nervous there, but the Ravens and the Steelers and the Bengals, I think all have enough question marks where you can kind of like get over the hump there.
I wanted to just say something on that. The fact that the Ravens are the second best odds here at plus 900 just speaks to the market. I'm just dying to get this out because I think it's absolutely insane. Like, I think the Ravens are going to have one of the worst defenses in the league. The talent is great. They don't have any pass rush. I mean, they signed Jadeveon Clowney. Great. He hasn't been an effective pass rusher in like 7 years. But taking aside Clowney, Odafe Owe was 130th or 125th in pressure rate last year. Like, that was their best pass rusher. Marlon Humphrey's been dreadful outside of the slot. Brandon Brandon Stevens is maybe the worst corner, certainly at the catch point. He's been dreadful also preventing separation. Kyle Hamilton's great. He'll be, a solid run stopper and play well in the slot. Like, yeah, they've got, Roquan Smith to plug the run gas, but like, unless they're scheming up pressure, to a degree we haven't seen in 20 years, there's no talent on this defense. None.
Yeah, the interior. First of all, tell us how you really feel. But no, I completely agree. Though, no, I mean the interior does not generate a pass rush at all. Marlon Humphrey's hurt. He's probably going to miss the first couple games of the season. It sounds like too. Like, yeah, the fact they're under George. When you said the two teams under 10-1, and I saw Baltimore was the other one with San Fran, I also was like, why are they on that high on the list?
We need to get. Actually, we don't need to get. Need to keep them far away from a PFF subscription where you can just look at the defensive lineup and go, some of these guys are not very good. That's really the analysis here. It's not like, freaking theoretical physics. And the other thing, like that offense, I think there are some question marks around what kind of an offense that will be. Do they, is there a transition period where, maybe they're turning the ball over a little bit more? I don't know. There are many, many reasons that does not make any sense. I really like this market. I think this is my favorite of the three, just because it really appears that there's a lack of kind of understanding of like how the NFL works here that I think can be taken advantage of. So we managed to get some actual betting advice preseason week 2. So shout out to you guys for that. That's true grit value delivered to the customer. I appreciate it. I hope that the printing press does as well. Before we get to the Tour Championship, Fabric by Gerber Life. Not something that I think about a lot, which is term life insurance. But many of you out there probably have young families, or you're thinking about starting one and you're like, okay, what are all the things that I need to make sure that my family's in good shape? And you probably don't want to spend a lot of time on them. Term life insurance sounds like something that, quite frankly, could take a very long time. But with Fabric, it takes you 10 minutes. It's high quality. It's trusted. You do it on your phone, and you can get a great quote without having to go talk to someone on the phone, which just sounds terrible. So go to MEET, fabric.com/forecast. That's M2ES, fabric.com/forecast, and get started today and then get covered in less than 10 minutes. Really, really easy. And then you can go back to taking advantage of these ridiculous markets that you can find somehow still in the middle of August. Policies are issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Okay, we got one last golf tournament. It is the Tour Championship. For those of you who have not been following the wackiness of golf, the way that the Tour Championship works, it basically crowns the winner of the FedEx Cup, which is this thing that the PGA Tour came up with to try and make the non-major tournaments interesting and get people to watch golf outside of the majors. What they initially found was that tracking points throughout the season kind of made the end of season tournaments feel sort of worthless, because someone could get a huge lead, largely through winning majors, and then could, top 20 in the last few tournaments and still win the FedEx Cup. So you'd have people, hoisting the $20 million FedEx Cup, at the end of the year, but finishing 20th in the last tournament. So people didn't like that. So now what they've done is they've created this thing where your point total, your standings going into the last tournament, which is the Tour Championship at East Lake, gives you basically a stroke advantage that, tries to put your season's worth of success into going into that last tournament and give you the appropriate advantage. And then the winner of this tournament wins the whole FedEx Cup. So it is a true, winner kind of take all. But because of that, there's this kind of weirdness to how things start out. So Brad, I believe you have this pulled up. There are 30 players that have made it to the Tour Championship. Scotty Scheffler leads. So he will begin at -10 at 10 under. And then from there, it goes all the way down to players starting at even. Do you want to kind of explain how that works?
First of all, just this massive tournament now. The purse for the winner is $18 million. The majors this year had a $20 million total purse for the entire field. So, it is going to be fun to watch. It's also a 30 maybe not 30 best players, but the 30 most consistent players throughout the season on tour. So you have Scotty Scheffler starting at -10 in this tournament. Victor Hovland, who shot a 61, a course record today to win the BMW, by the way, which is pretty badass.
Yeah.
He's at -8. You got Rory McIlroy at -7, George's favorite golfer. You got John Rahm at -6. You got Lucas Glover at -5. A big group at -4 is Max Homa, Patrick Cantlay, Brian Harmon, Wyndham Clark, and Matt Fitzpatrick. I'll do one more group. At -3, you got Tommy Fleetwood, Russell Henley, Keegan Bradley, Ricky Fowler, and Xander Schauffele.
Starting at even. That's right. Those guys
So they're at -3. There's a couple. Oh, well, I'll finish it up. All right. -2, you got Tom Kim, Sung J M, Tony Finau, Corey Connors, Siwoo Kim. -1, Nick Taylor, Adam Schenk, Colin Morikawa, Jason Day. Last but not least, at even, Sam Burns, Emiliano Grillo, Tyrrell Hatton, Jordan Spieth, and Sepp Straka.
Okay, so I guess the first question is, and by the way, we couldn't find odds on this yet, so we'll talk about it more on Wednesday when odds are out there, if there's any value. But I guess the kind of the first question is, like, how far back, are you kind of willing to go here? Obviously, Scheffler is going to be a prohibitive favorite, even more so than he normally is going into a tournament because he has a lead. So, I guess from your perspective, Brad, like, where's the cutoff? What is the last position at which you think someone can come through and win the tournament?
I think it's a combination of how far back and also just the pool of players. For me, it's the top 10 and the 6th through 10th players at -4. So you're already starting 6 strokes behind a Scotty Scheffler. But because it kind of goes quickly down to -8, you're 4 strokes back of a Victor Hovland, a one-hole swing where you birdie, he bogeys, and you're already pretty close. So I go there, and that group is Homa, Cantlay, Harmon, Clark, and Fitzpatrick. I mean, those are major winners from this year, or guys that have finished in the top 10, top 20 a dozen times this year. I think that trench of players I would look into. Below that, I'm not really sure. I think those guys can make up the difference.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky. I wish Schauffele were a little closer. So I looked this up on Data Golf, thanks to you, Brad. And the East Lake Golf Club, they've been playing the Tour Championship there for a little while. And so it's not quite Augusta National in terms of how predictive previous performance has been. But it's certainly not the least predictive. It's kind of right in the middle there. An adjustment of, let's see, I guess 0.5 or 0.05, I guess, strokes gained based on prior history. So that's not nothing. Schauffele has had the best true strokes gained on the course over the past 5 seasons. He finished 4th last year, T5 the year before, T2 the year before that, 2nd the year before that, and T7 in 2018. So in 24, he's had 24 rounds there, plus 3.34 is true strokes gained. He's been phenomenal. So I don't know if he feels a little far out, but he's a guy that can go super, super low. Scotty Scheffler and Rory both looked like they were putting with an axe today. Which, can potentially exacerbate itself, and that maybe opens the door. A guy like John Rahm, potentially, who's played really, really well at East Lake in the past, T15 last year, 2nd the year before, and 4th the year before that. Interestingly, a guy that has also had a ton of success there was Justin Thomas. But don't think you can score low if you're not playing in the tournament. So I think those are a couple that I'm kind of looking at as the odds come out. Where's Schauffele starting again, Brad?
So I think Schauffele's a great shout. So he's just 1 stroke below at -3. But I will say the main reason I didn't like that cluster, I like Tommy Fleetwood, but I think he needs everything to kind of go his way to win a tournament. Russell Henley's a good player, consistent this year. Keegan Bradley, all due respect, is not going to make up a 7-stroke thing. Ricky Fowler, I also don't feel the way about Ricky Fowler. Schauffele could go out there and shoot a 63 on the first day and immediately be in the mix. He's that type of guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've seen him open up with low 60 score in big tournaments already. At the US Open, didn't close that out. But Judah, budding golf aficionado, your take.
Yeah, I think that's right in the sense of you want to be looking for guys who can put up, my like shooting a 62, a 63, whatever it is, as opposed to like guys who need to shoot like consistent 67s to win a tournament. Like Brian Harman, I don't think is a guy who's gonna, just like go out and make up the difference. He's gonna win the tournament like he did. He's just got to be super consistent over 4 days, shooting like 66, 67s. I think John Rahm's a guy. Even we saw it also in the Open, just like who can rip off a crazy score. He's someone I'd keep my eye on. Patrick Cantlay as well also can just have that kind of upside of a day. Look, I think Scotty Scheffler is there for a reason at the top of the leaderboard. He's unbelievably consistent. If you just look at his tee to green rankings at every tournament, with the exception of one, it's just like he's first, second, or third, and he's in first place for a good reason, and it's gonna be tough to dethrone him.
That's a good point. I'm bummed there are no odds out. It's a major loss. There's nothing to bet on this beautiful Sunday evening, and we can't get odds out for the Tour Championship. Just sad. It's really sad. Maybe it's because of the hurricane and the earthquake. Let me tell you something. No one overreacts to weather like Californians do. This has been an absolute privilege watching people pretend that the end times are near. Little wet outside, but I think everyone's going to survive. That was our podcast. God willing, I don't get washed away, and I will be back with these beautiful people on Wednesday evening. We're getting very, very close to actual NFL football. It's going to be a great show, so come join us on Wednesday. We'll also be doing our kind of intro to the Guess the Lines contest over the next week. So make sure you tune in so you can get all of the details for that and make sure you are a part of it. To do that, you will need to join the Discord so you can get out ahead and tap that link and get yourself involved. Have a wonderful start to your week. Love y'all. Peace.